Hello, thank you for joining. I'm hoping everyone's doing well wherever you are and however you are in this moment. I have a lot of ideas and feelings for today, and I want to try to bring it in and create something that is a conversation that is hopefully able to really land and able to really feel good for wherever you happen to be in your world in your process. So today, and as it says in the description, we're just kind of diving into the concept of our emotions around when we are stretching our limits, and that can be very unique, very different for each and every person. um, to kind of enter into this fairly grand concept. So feelings have the ability to change who we are on a fundamental level. They have the ability to change how we are perceiving ourselves, how we're perceiving others, how we're perceiving our environment and the world in general. So feelings are really a powerful tool to tap into. And when you start to really recognize your unique sensations that occur within the physical, which is like a storage house for your feelings that are meant to be felt within the physical element, so that you can really start to communicate on several very diverse, very complex, but also very simple systems that you're working with within this 3D world. It's just such a beautiful mosaic that can begin to occur, such an aha, um, empowering moment in time when you start to recognize your patterns, you start to recognize your feelings and what it means when you are feeling something in your physical. You can tend to find actually some fairly common, not always, but fairly common, I guess, regularities in the signals. So and again, I can use only myself because each of us is so unique and so diverse within how we present ourselves to the world, and in what way we take the world back into us. So, for an example, for myself, when I lean into, or when I start to feel in my body fear, anxiety, or any kind of a little bit more of a um, an activation or an activating of the fight, flight, freeze response system. My signals for a lot of the time, those particular emotions, so fear, anxiety, a little bit of, um, I guess, doubt would be in there as well. It begins to immediately classify itself in my gut, in around my belly button, right into and quite deep into my digestive system. So a lot of things end up being triggered and occurring within my digestive system, that is being kind of felt because of this emotional response to whatever happens to be happening, that is that it's activating that. So it's an interesting, and I'm going to just share a little story, that possibly you might feel into and might represent in its own unique way where you have been or where you are at, or possibly where you might eventually be, and maybe this teaching will come in handy for you. um, so being able to put yourself out there into the world, so being able to do something that is different, outside your realm of comfort. um, I mean, to be honest, as humans, we do that all the time, or we are doing that all the time, much more so when you're younger, because everything is new when you're younger. And if you kind of bring yourself back into your childlike state, which might end up doing a little bit of a meditation just to kind of foster that. We'll see how much time we have. When you go into that childhood state, you can really begin to attune yourself to your personality as a child. So you depending on your situation, depending on your story, depending on how you were kind of supported or sometimes not supported at that kind of very fundamental growing period in your personality is really a guide to how you move forward and how you possibly continue to move forward even into your adult life with the same patterns and the same kind of story or pieces that come up from childhood or from an early kind of developmental beginning, which tends to be between birth and 7 years old, is a really powerhouse time for us developing and beginning to create ourselves, and where we stand and how we move forward in the world, is really kind of, it's not locked in. I never believe that anything's locked in, but it's definitely kind of solidified during that time. So again, going back to self. So for myself, as a youth, as a young person, very no fear orientated, very just a lot of do and I mean, perhaps there was some thinking going on. However, I definitely was, and my personality from a very young age, I have been able to recall, in my memories, and especially just recently going through some of my own personal deep dives into my sexuality and into my concepts of who I was during that foundational time from 7 years and before, for quite a big chunk of my adult and for my life actually. I had no memory, and this was a protective space for myself. No memory of between 5, 6 years old and beforehand. So over the last year, but probably a couple of years, I've been slowly kind of bringing forward memories and starting to reconnect with my childhood self, and that's been such a beautiful experience. And again, it's such a powerhouse teaching. It's phenomenal when you get to really feel what it was like and experience what it was like at that time, and to then just kind of begin to understand yourself a little bit more on how you deal with situations in your adult life, how you deal with, or how you begin to process something that does feel like fear, something that does feel like anxiety, or it is holding itself in your physical form. There's reasons behind that. And I'm just going to put a little pause on that so I don't go too deep down that particular teaching or that particular rabbit hole. We want to kind of stay on the surface. So yeah, so just going into my own childhood and just recognizing and realizing how much of a little bit of a daredevil and a little bit of a freedom thinker, freedom orientated, just doing, and that got me into trouble. That and my environment wasn't necessarily, again, opinions, but in my opinion, my environment wasn't safe for me to be that way, for me to be, another fundamental part that occurs, and this is once again developed at such a young age, is our need is to feel safe and secure, and ideally we get that need from our parents. However, if that's not occurring, or if that doesn't feel safe and secure, you as an individualized and as a growing at a very rapid rate little being, you will make choices within your environment to keep yourself safe and secure. And so one of those fundamental pieces for myself, for my story, was kind of putting myself in a box. So even though putting myself in a box felt horrific, not something that I wanted, or not something that was maybe a natural part of who I was, fundamentally it meant that I needed it because I needed that box. I didn't have the safe parameters, um, kind of constructed by the parental or by the people that were necessarily in those roles at that age. And so I ended up creating a proverbial box, and keeping myself quite small within that box in order to keep myself safe, if that makes sense. Now, going back to the emotional, now a big part of that emotional response was also not only making myself small, however, also beginning to understand that, I wasn't able to eat during certain stressful periods. I wasn't able to digest my food, so it felt very uncomfortable if I was eating during those stressful periods. It started to bring on a really visceral feeling when I was feeling unsafe, when I was feeling like my environment wasn't supporting me, and so hence that has kind of been brought forward. Another huge realization, and again, the diving and the ability to go deep here is up to you. I want you to kind of just feel into your own story, feel into your own patterns. But another component is when I go to do something new, or I go to um, experience or really really stretch myself beyond my limits, I myself will push and push and push and really go really deep, deep, deep into those like con- what feel is my limits, and I will go in with less thinking, because then again, that's kind of where the fearlessness comes in. Is if we go into the ego mind, if we allow that to kind of be our vocal point, it'll put so many stories in our mind of doubt, and shame ends up kind of being kind of this like, oh, and so it's not necessarily always true. And that's what's super interesting, is those stories aren't always necessarily true, yet they feel true to us because of the sensations that they're bringing up in the body. So as we lean into, and as I'll bring it more of a personal side, as I leaned into it, it ended up just creating such a tightness in my body. If I did not have an outside person saying, "You got this," or it would be a very simple, like, some type of positive feedback, some type of exterior where I knew I wasn't just completely isolated and alone. It would just give me that little bit of a push to go through that fear, through that going from feeling frozen and not literally not being able to self motivate, or being able to kind of get into that next level. Leveling up is another way that I would classify it as. And all I as a teeny tiny child, and as a fully functioning adult, I recognize this key element in myself, that I am very fearless. I can accomplish a lot when I put my mind to something. And then when I get to that vocal point where it's like, whoop, and there's that wall, there's that invisible ceiling, whatever you want to kind of, whatever makes sense in your mind, it's in order for me to kind of break through that, there is a where I'm kind of like, oh, I'm about to break stuff on a metaphorical level. And I'm kind of looking around and just needing that little bit of support, not a ton of support. As soon as I get that momentum going again, then I recognize there's a whole other big amount of space that I'm just fearless again. But it's those pieces, those little adjustments where all of a sudden I'm in fear, I'm in doubt, I'm in anxiety. And for myself, my sweet spot, my golden little nugget, is for me to ask, and for me to be able to really hold space for myself, because it's very uncomfortable for me to ask for help, which I've been working on and working on as I've gone through this many many years of self development, self growth, however you want to look at it. But as I begin to recognize, okay, I just need one person to just kind of help me to push through that barrier. And then it's magic. That this is my story, this is my understanding, this is how I was able to, and it took me time to be able to really dig in and find my root, find my where the root, so where that solidified part of myself kind of went down, and it would allow me to shift that energy, shift that fear into excitement. And as soon as someone was like, wow, that's cool, and there was just like that little bit of belief in me, all of a sudden I was like, thanks so much, that's all I needed to hear. I've got this from here. And it just, my momentum, my whatever you want to call it, proverbial ball, my stuck feeling just dissipated, and I could continue to go through and lean into that fearlessness that is, again, a part of my natural construct. So that's just an interesting story, because also a piece that can occur, and again, this can occur at any time throughout your lifespan, and it's sometimes, and a lot of the time, it can feel like it comes out of nowhere. There can be an interesting component where you start to recognize, oh, this is what I need, again, from my community, from my support system, from the people that I really trust and I know that they've got my back. And that's super duper important to have. It doesn't mean you have to have a huge group. I think a big part of the sometimes the lack of connection, if I may be so bold to say that, is that we, in our mind tells us that we have a lot of connections. Our mind tells us that there's a lot of people out there that like have our back. Yet someone that is there and able to have your back, there is some really fundamental needs that need to occur within that interaction. And that doesn't always mean just, contacting them every day. For some people, that's where those needs are. However, I want to lean into that just a little bit before we go kind of backwards a little. That connection really needs to have a couple of fundamental needs being met in order to allow, and in order there to be a real balance between two people interacting. And again, whether that's in lovers, family or family dynamics, between kids and adults, between friendships, it is unique. Each of those dynamics, and it can even be within a community dynamic as well. So between a group of people. Um, and again, not to go too dark, too much into that, but there is some needs that need to be met there, and so being able to find out, like, what do I need from my authentic connection, support system, and even if you have just one person, that is kind of filling, and there is a beautiful transfer of energy that occurs between either the two of you or between the groups. Oh, again, that's another really foundational part of working through and being able to move forward past fear, past anxiety, past, you know, because that little bit of support is just, it is a piece of being human. We kind of need support in one way or another, not all the time, and it's important to make sure that we're not always leaning outside of others. To be able to know what you need to do is important, and that's attuning yourself into that inner knowing space. However, being able to also understand you are going to come into feelings of heavy, feelings of doubt, feelings of fear, and what happens. What are the steps you take when you get into that stage? So that's kind of what we're talking about today. Okay, coming back. So interesting. At any time throughout a life, throughout your experiences, the many, many that you have had so far, the many more you're going to have as you continue forward, each and every experience has little tokens and little nuggets that can be implanted into our patterns. They can be working for us and allowing us to move forward. They can be kind of, and again, in my personal opinion, they can be working, it's not against, but they are definitely working where we are either being stuck or stale in our environment, and or they are pulling us actively down. And there can be a very broad range of kind of action steps between this pendulum swing. However, the most important piece is to tap into your feeling, because you will be able to kind of get more clarity on where you are and what is happening within your life right now, right today, just by allowing your feelings to come forward and come and trickle to the surface, not take you over, not come down on you like a tidal wave, which is what occurs sometimes when people push their feelings and push those sensations down for a prolonged period of time. It can feel very, very overwhelming and very, um, the word destructive comes up because it can feel very destructive for yourself and for your people that are in your direct environment. And what I'm encouraging you to do is just to kind of lean in, not to take on the feelings all at once, but just to be able to choose a little tiny bit, possibly in your physical body, where you can just kind of become curious of, again, for my example, my digestive. So when my digestive starts to clench and starts to shut down, meaning that I'm not digesting my food, I can feel it from many years of being attuned to it. I can feel it almost instantaneous. That one sensation is a little aha moment for me to be like, oh, I need some time, again, for myself. I need some alone time to be able to process what is physically occurring in my body at this moment, and why. Where is the why coming from? Now, again, when you go through times, and I went through many, many times of real tough lessons. Um, those tough lessons can sometimes put us in an automatic, it's like a vice. It's like your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual selves are being locked in a vice, and it can feel like it's not a choice, it's just something that is happening to you, and that perpetual feeling will start to create quite a big cycle of I'm having a hard time grasping at something that would be a gentle way of expressing it. It just feels like your whole life is falling apart. There's no way to kind of to create a gentle way of saying that. And when you're stuck in a vice, it's possibly the most excruciating experience for a human who is naturally just geared towards wanting and needing growth, wanting and needing the ability to feel like, even if it's little steps. And again, some of us are really geared towards taking big steps. That's a personality thing too. But little steps is where it's at. We should always be taking little tiny steps every day, every week, every month, every year, little baby steps to allow that forward movement, and that feeds something in the soul. It feeds our soul's purpose. It feeds our ability to be recognizing and realizing that we are an active, participating person in our life story. When we are in that vice, it can feel like we are not an active part of our story. And at a going even further down that, it can feel like we have no control, like nothing ends up mattering, and like the people and the possibly even the people that have our backs, but it can just feel like we are kind of being attacked from everywhere, even if that's, again, those stories, even if that's not always the case. It is our reality, and it's never it, I feel it's never an important feature to ever put down someone's reality. So just be mindful of that, whether you're in it, been in it, helping someone through it. It is crucial. It is extremely crucial that wherever you are learning something, there is something that needs to be felt gently and with compassion and in little tiny micro bites. But to be able to begin to feel it and to have curiosity around it, there is some real lovely, it's always about accepting and allowing the free flow to occur. And again, like I said, whether you're kind of working on that, or tuning yourself to that and feeling that for yourself, or you're taking in the information and you're kind of seeing or feeling that for another, a loved one, is super important that you're never making the situation, how you're feeling, or what is occurring as hmm, give me a second to find the right terminology, as wrong. Okay? It is not wrong. You are not wrong. They are not wrong. What is occurring is a process. It is elemental truth of getting the privilege of experiencing the life that we are all simultaneously and in many ways, in many diverse, components, living this story, and this story within ourselves, a story that we are crisscrossing with other people. I mean, when you really look into it, it's phenomenal, but it's also the ability to feel very overwhelming, very exhausting, very um, resistant to feeling safe. A lot comes back to that safety and that security. So when you are diving in and when you are beginning to want to, and again, there needs to be a want and a need in order to motivate change. You will not change something if you do not, if it's comfortable, or if you found a very comfortable kind of what's that word, if you've kind of locked off or not activated your emotional state, it just becomes complacent. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That can be a place that some people are in for sometimes a really long time, and it just feels safe. It feels like, okay, I don't want to or need to do anything about this. And that's okay. That is okay. There is some real amazing, really massive lessons that go in that space. However, if there is a need, if you start to get to a point where like, oh, I cannot fathom continuing on this particular path, that is the crucial. And again, it can be these little nuggets of like, okay, there's a part of me that really needs to be motivated to move forward. How do I do that? And this is a part of the process, as I was kind of explaining today, is just feeling it little tiny bits at a time, being able to, again, go into sometimes some of the child's personality traits if you are blessed enough to remember. And if you're not, that's okay. Like I was explaining, there's lots of lessons just within this conversation. But I think we have a little bit of time to be able to just create some space on how to bring yourself into that childhood self, and being able to just explore, where there could have been some patterns there, and what has been transferred throughout the years, throughout the ages, and transformed and shifted and reshaped into who you are now in this moment. And there's also the ability, if you aren't feeling supported, or if you are having a hard time where you're connecting or lacking connection in your life, there's another beautiful teaching where you can actually go to your highest self, and that can be that one token, that one um, pillar in your life, that person. So you're actually going into and tapping into your, I guess it would be your higher self, but your future self, who is able to be that support for you. And there are so many teachings within that as well. So to bring it all together, wherever and however you're feeling right here, right now, I encourage you just to feel it, be completely accepting of whatever's coming forward, whatever's bubbling to the surface. I know I am actively working on this for myself, which is why I brought this forward this morning. It should be, and again, I use the word should in such a very specific way. The word should be used as it's a general guideline. Okay, so when you're feeling things, it should be a gentle kind of unwrapping of. It shouldn't be going and tearing things apart, and every layer of your feelings, every layer that you're experiencing, your emotions, is a beautiful gift. Even the ones that feel low vibration, that can feel like they're hindering, they are giving some of the most powerful resilience that you can ever cultivate within a lifetime. So they have their purpose. The most important component is not making it wrong, if that makes sense. So lean into it, have some curiosity, allow the flow of it. And if, again, these little tiny tidbits, if you can feel it kind of resonating somewhere in your body, you'd be surprised where it can hold itself. Just kind of breathe into that. And again, that would be a little bit of a cue going into a meditation. You can go through any of my meditations that I've done with the intention of relaxing the body, feeling out where there might be, where am I holding in this moment in time stress? And actually, you want to be much more specific. So, where am I holding some stress? Okay, this area. Where am I holding my fear in this moment? Where, and again, it's a curiosity, it's not a hardness. Where am I feeling this anxiety? Where am I feeling this doubt? And just whatever word comes to you. Words have power. They begin to create an automatic loop cycle. So as we say a word, whether you're saying it internally or whether you're saying it externally, it has a lot of power in how you're presenting yourself and how you're going forward in your life. So just ask the questions, get into a deep, relaxed state so that you do feel very safe and very secure. Those are a need in order for you to ask these deeper questions. Okay. And what's fascinating to me is our unique abilities to be able to align ourselves with our life's purpose. It's a diverse and very unique um, formula that is part of us learning about ourselves. Nobody can give you a formula. Oh, this is my formula here. This is going to work, and this is going to work and be your formula now. It doesn't work that way for a reason. There is no cheating or no being able to take shortcuts in life. Your ability to want to lean into things is going to be your choice and your choice alone. Your ability to be able to be curious and or be judgmental is also your choice, and it'll have two very different outcomes, neither of them wrong, but both of them definitely have some interesting learning experiences that are quite diverse and quite different, and everything in between. Okay. So I just want to kind of end off. So when you feel in harmony with your life's purpose, when you're feeling in harmony, I'm going to go a little bit more expanded. When you're feeling in harmony with the universe, with yourself, with your environment, the people in your environment, and you're uniquely connecting to your joy centers, it's these moments in time. They will come and they will flow, just the same as it's important not to grasp onto them and try to cling on, because then they dissipate way faster than they need to. The biggest thing is not to hold or try to control those in and outs. It's just to enjoy it, knowing that it will come up again when you are in that flow state. When you're in the rigid state, it's very similar to my metaphor that I find is really helpful is when you're floating in water. Okay. Those of you that have a hard time floating in water, whether you realize this or not, it's because your muscles, your tissue is solid, and there is a sense of fear, or there is a sense of, again, this could be part of the mind, part of a past story. The relevance is extremely palatable here, though, is when you are in fear in life, just the same as when you are in fear in water, your body tenses and you sink like a rock. When you allow, and it's a choice, there is nobody that can make anybody go relax and choose that for them. When you choose and when you actively, a lot of people need to actually work on this skill. You actively choose to just relax the muscle tissue, relax the nervous system, relax the body. You'll float. And you'll float in your own unique way, and you'll have sensations of fluidity. Even the water, it is supportive. It's the same thing as the energetic field of the universe, and that field itself holds and cradles us. um, it it also has the ability to, again, when we're in fear, sink us and feel very overwhelming, just the same as if you were to sink under the water down to the bottom of the pool. Think of those same sensations. How would you feel? Your needs would not be feeling like you are getting met. One of the very first things that comes to mind is oxygen. So, feel into that metaphor, but there's so many layers if you so choose to go on this mission, to go on this exploratory journey. And when you surrender, this beautiful word of surrender, which, you know, kind of is part and parcel with go with the flow, but it's its own word. A surrendering of the elements, a surrendering of what is not in our control creates freedom. It creates the space to then realize we have now the space to manifest what we do want to move forward with, or what we can control in our direct environment, like taking a couple of minutes, doing a little bit of a body tune in. That is something that, on a deep level, not just, yes, our world is becoming much more attuned to, okay, we need to take self-care time, we need to make sure we have a couple of minutes that just is all about us. This is beautiful. Like, it's taken us a long time, I think, and it's going to continue. We're going to continue leaning into that, I hope. But it's that surrender to the elements, to outside forces, to other people and their expectations, to society and what it, again, wants, or feels like you want, or feels like you should want. And again, that should is being represented as kind of an enforcement. Okay, there's lots of different variations of how a should word is used. you know, these aren't necessarily what is going to allow us to elevate out of that free flow emotional state. Those things are going to keep us stuck and keep us in fear, and that is not necessarily working for our collective benefit. Whenever I try to make a choice that I feel is hmm, making me feel like just horrible. Like, there's no other way. I can't think of a better descriptive word. When there tends to be an environment or things happening around me that is just making me feel horrible, I am human. It does not mean that I am above getting angry or getting upset. And I know for my own self, when I am feeling like I'm being caged, my ability to break and want to just break free and do anything I can possibly do to make that happen is going to be there. And I know that is, again, part of being human. That is part of this experience as well. However, when I allow and I really give up that control of others, of the environment, of the scenarios, that I just I can't be out here all the time. Sometimes it's good to be exploratory out here, but it's not a place to live. I need to surrender, and I need to reconnect to my inner knowing, reconnect to my heart space, because my heart space will choose the choices that is beneficial to myself. And the only person that knows what is beneficial to me is me. However, there's also a deeper link there when I am surrendering to the external and all the multitude of ideas and thoughts and choices, and it's overwhelming. When I surrender to that and I begin to bring my energetic field into myself and I make the choices, those choices are usually what's beneficial for the collective as well. It's usually, there's not harm, there's not wanting to create malice or dysfunction in another. It's just doing what is right for me in this moment. And I think there's a lot of power to that as well, is that floating, because you're floating now, and the universe has got you. The universal pull energetic field, however you want to look at it in your mind's eye, It is supporting you if you just lean into it and trust. Thank you. That was a little bit of a longer one today, but I really felt that was important. I know it was important for me. I needed the teachings that come through and are shared because we are connected. We are we are achieving and struggling in very similar concepts, but also these universal constructs that are there to teach us and to help us to evolve. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening in, for tuning in. Hopefully some of the pieces I was able to kind of bring forward landed, and you can kind of take it and again just allow things to percolate. What ultimately any of my teachings goals are is to allow the mind and the heart to begin to take in information simultaneously. A lot of the time, I feel, especially in this present moment, our world is constantly gearing itself towards the mind only. And and I think there's going to be some really important lessons there. However, you don't have to necessarily agree, and you don't necessarily have to jump on that proverbial bandwagon. My teachings, how I present my teachings, its fundamental goal is to allow you to bring in information, but not just through the mind. It's an openness to it, I hope, that allows the mind and heart and really that heart space behind the heart, so that soul space, to kind of create this beautiful. I visualize it again, and this happens in my teachings quite often as like this very beautiful kind of intertwining, but it's nothing over empowers the other. It is balance, it is free flow, and there is a lack of trying to control, if that makes sense. So it's a space, and again, when I come into that and when I'm able to teach, I go into that space of maybe not control, but of just attuning. And when you're hopefully receiving the teachings, it's the same component. You're just open to taking in what lands and what feels right to you, and you allow everything else just to kind of settle off to the side. And again, you can pick up those pieces later on, or you can listen to these teachings again, and I can guarantee it, hear something ever so slightly different. So that's just a little bit of a framework that I wanted to share. Thank you so much for joining in today, and I will talk to you soon. See you tomorrow.